Welcome to the unit on Judaism. This unit will be different than the others in that so far, with the exception perhaps of a few of the indigenous religions, we have mainly been focused on Eastern religions. We're going to begin looking now at Western religions. Even those indigenous religions are different and don't really fall into necessarily the category of Western religion, because they aren't as focused in the Western tradition that comes out of, say, the Greeks and the Hebrews. That's sort of where the Western tradition grows. Now, there's a lot of differences between Western and Eastern religions. All of the Western religions we're going to study now are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All of them are a lot alike. They're very different from the previous ones. I know that some of the previous religions probably talked a little bit more about having a cyclical view of history, and the Western traditions have a linear view. The idea there is that for the Eastern traditions, history is sort of repeats itself. It's sort of like the seasons of the year. Eventually, it will become cold and winter will come and it will warm up and there will be spring and there will be summer and then fall will come and winter. And it's just sort of a process of going around and around and around. I mean, to a certain degree, even like with Buddhism, is a good example. There's no necessarily ever an end to the cycle of life and rebirth. And a lot of these religions hold that there's no real concept of beginning and end, that there just is sort of this continual going around, the continual process of life. Whereas the Western religions are linear in focus. The idea is that history has progress, that the world can be getting better, or it can be getting worse. Hopefully, we're getting better, but for the most part, there is this concept that history is moving forward. History is going from one point to another, that yesterday builds upon today. We won't be back to yesterday again, and we can work forward, and life is not just going around in a circle. So that's one big difference. And so, the idea of creator and the idea of improving the world and other things are part of that. The other thing is that they are all, these religions of the West, I guess one thing I wrote was that, you can sort of see these as a difference between the religions of the East are about seeking inner peace, and the religions of the West are about seeking God. In these traditions, in the Western tradition, there's definitely a concept that there is this being, God, and we are trying to find out, and we use our religion to find that. Whereas the Eastern religions, God is not so much a big issue. They believe in God, they believe in gods, they believe in a lot of these things, but the real goal, the real end, is to find inner peace and to find this within yourself. Now, we can say that all the religions of the West sort of draw their roots from Judaism. Christianity, Judaism, to a large degree it is considered a messianic religion, but the difference is that within Judaism, they don't believe that the Messiah has come, and Christianity believes that the Messiah has come in the form of Jesus. And so both of them use the original texts of the Jewish faith as their source of biblical truth. But Islam also does as well. Islam believes that instead of that when Sarah and Abraham wanted to have a baby, that basically Sarah wasn't sure that she'd be able to. She was too old, and so she told Abraham to go sleep with her maid Hagar, and together he got her pregnant, and they were going to have a baby and raise it, and the baby's name was Ishmael. Well, then Sarah became pregnant, and suddenly with Isaac, and suddenly there was a change. Suddenly, Ishmael was put out. Ishmael was not a welcome person anymore because she had her own baby. So they sent Ishmael. I think he was supposed to kill her and the baby, but instead he put them in the wilderness, basically to die. But instead, God helped them, and they survived. And Ishmael went on to have 12 children that became sort of the 12 tribes of Islam, whereas Isaac ended up having 12 kids that became the 12 tribes of Judaism. And so both of them share that same root, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about that story later. But essentially, they all come out of that same tradition. They all come out of the tradition of Judaism. Christianity is, believing the Messiah has come, and that Islam is a belief that they're essentially yet another prophet in a series of prophets, that Muhammad comes as a prophet to discuss and provide greater insight into God, and that they essentially draw their lineage back to Abraham through Ishmael. Now, one of the things, and this is sort of my whole my main point about Judaism. Largely, I've been talking about Western religion so far, but I want to talk just a little bit about Judaism. But I think that the video from Rabbi what's his name? Rabbi Michael Datz, that was made by the previous instructor in this course, does a very good job of explaining Judaism. So I'm not going to talk for a long time about it, but one of the things that oftentimes comes up with is sort of a regular occurrence, is that people get mad that sometimes a judge or some political leader or something will put a copy of the Ten Commandments somewhere, and they will become angry and unhappy about that. And for the most part, I mean, even if I had no religious inclinations or anything, I don't really, it wouldn't bother me per se. I mean, there's a lot of things I see every day that don't particularly I just pass by them and don't think about them. But a lot of people have an issue with that, and that becomes a big issue. Well, in reference to the Ten Commandments, people oftentimes say, well, this is a list of rules. And to a certain degree, most of you know the Ten Commandments to be things like don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness, don't covet. Well, those are the last 5 of the Ten Commandments. As a matter of fact, the first 5 are really very specific to religion. Actually, the first 3, particularly, the first one is, thou shalt have no other God before the Lord thy God, before, the main God, before the God of Judaism. The next one is, don't make any graven images. The third commandment is, don't take the Lord's name in vain. And then the fourth one is maybe a little bit kind of a rule, like don't kill, it's keep the Sabbath, but that's still a pretty specific religious one. And then the fifth one, which is not so much like these don't do this, don't do that ones, it's honor thy mother and father, which once again sort of takes on a little bit of a religious or ethical inclination more than specifically prohibiting dangerous behavior. But the whole point of why I bring this up is that I do think that the atheists and others have a very valid point in that this Ten Commandments is very specific about part of what Judaism is Judaism is about establishing a covenant between God and a group of people, an ethnic group of that are Israelites, the Jewish people. And so what happens is the way they do it is God says, I want you to follow these rules and you will be my chosen people. You will be special. You will be set apart. This is the one God who has picked this group of people to be his people. And the way he does it is he says, I need you to follow certain rules. Don't have any other gods. Don't make any graven images. Don't take my name in vain. Go to church on the Sabbath. And then the rest, honor thy mother and father, and then don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness, don't covet thy neighbor's stuff. That essentially, the first 3 or 4 are all about establishing this covenant relationship. The first 4 are definitely. The 5th one is probably a little bit more in with the later ones, the last 5. But it really is about the fact that, you need to be faithful to me as your God, and that you need to honor me. And the rest are more about general behavior. And so one thing to keep in mind is when you do that is you have to realize that Judaism is about a covenant, and that is about establishing that. And so a large degree, the 10 Commandments do spend a lot of time talking about establishing a covenant and building a relationship, which is very religious in nature. That these aren't just 10 rules of how you live your life. And in that regard, if it were just 10 rules of how you live your life, I personally would think that would be very valuable. But we have to remember that they are very specific, very religious, and very much about building that relationship. And that is a key concept within Judaism, which is why I bring that up. Once again, like I said, I don't really have a problem if they want to hang it up. I also see the other side of the argument. It's not really particularly that big a deal to me. But, I teach philosophy and religion, so I guess I don't get that worked up about some things.